What's up, guys? Cody today with the patch 6.4 rundown. So let's dive on right into it. So Ahri got a nerf, small nerf. Her E no longer interrupts dashes, which is going to hurt the really good Ahri players. Ashe getting a small buff. Her Q now lasts for 5 seconds, and the stacks on it fall off one at a time, which is good. It's gonna help her a little bit. Caitlyn getting a buff. Her W now deals a certain amount of damage instead of percentage, and it scales off of her AD, and her E cooldown is now decreased. Ezreal getting the nerf. His cooldown for his ultimate is now up by 40 seconds. Not the best of things for him, but still viable. Fiora getting nerfed, thank God. Her W cooldown being increased, and her E cooldown being decreased, but now starts after the second hit, which is good. Gangplank getting nerfed. His Q now gives him 2 less gold, and his E now has 3 barrels at all levels instead of 2 to 5, depending upon the rank of his ultimate, and the recharge time is now decreased for that as well. Alawi fixing a bug for her, which helps her a little bit. Jhin, his base movement speed is up by 5. His health regeneration and his health regeneration growth up a little bit, and they updated the recommended items for him. This is good for him. This is going to help him a little bit. His passive, the 4th bullet, will now mini crit structures for 40% reduced damage. And now attack speed reduction will now be applied to him correctly, and they fixed a bug for rapid fire with him. W, the marks on enemies will no longer fall off while Jhin is casting his W, and his W is now considered single target. Jin's E will now apply the mark to anybody that is slowed or damaged by it, and his ultimate is now single target. Katarina, she's getting a buff. Her Q, the bouncing does not decrease the damage anymore, and it's also increased for the AP ratio on that. Kog'Maw getting a nerf. His attack speed is now down by 0.04, still viable though. Lucian getting a nerf. His range on his ult is down by 200, not too bad though. Malphite, base health regeneration down to 7. And his E now does less damage. Nerf, but not too bad. Rumble, his E now works on a charge system where he can have 2 charges. Each charge costs 10 heat, but the slow duration is now down to 2 seconds. Also, Rumble can overheat using 1 charge from his E, and if he has a second one, he can use that one while silent still. Ryze, his Q is getting buffed, which is good for him, since that is the skill that you max first. So that's going to deal increased damage now. Shen, his E can now affect monsters, so that's going to help him take Rift Scuttler a lot faster. Sivir getting a buff where her W is now going to crit, with the W bouncing blades are now going to crit everything else that it hits. So if the first one crits the first target, all the other ones are going to crit, which is going to help her in team fights. Tahm Kench, Q width being decreased by 20, and now Abyssal Voyage now has a 1 second delay before recast, but the total travel time is unchanged, and now people can jump into it while he's in his whirlpool thing. So in that sense, his ult kind of got buffed a little bit, but I mean, it's honestly not even noticeable. And the Q is got nerfed. With the Q was a nerf, of course. Udyr getting nerfed. His W shield amount is now going to be down, and his R Phoenix stance is now going to do less damage. Victor, for some reason, he got a nerf this patch. His E does a little bit less damage. Xin Zhao getting nerfed because he was buffed last patch, now is rampaging all over the lower elos. So yeah, His W, the AP ratio on that got decreased, and the attack speed on that got hit hard, in my opinion. It's now down to 60% from what it was last patch at 80%. That is a big nerf, in my opinion. So, onto the items. Boots of Swiftness, now down by 5 movement speed. Mercury Sheds, up 10% on the Tenacity, so now it's at 30%. Manamune now gains +1 mana every 8 seconds. And Muramana kind of got a nerf and a buff at the same time. It's a buff for people that aren't mechanically skilled as much as other people, because now the passive on it is not a toggle anymore. It works on champions now. Single target spells and basic attack champions will consume 3% of the current mana that you own. And this ability, this will not activate if you are under 20% of your mana. But this is a nerf in the sense that sometimes if you were mechanically skilled and actually wanted to toggle it on and off, you don't have that option anymore, and so now you'll be using mana that you don't want to. Runic Echoes getting a nerf, now down to 7% movement speed instead of 10% movement speed. Iceborne Gauntlet, overall it's a nerf. The size ratio for the slow is now smaller for the base size, is now down to 180, but the bonus armor increase for it is now increased. But the slow no longer remains on the ground, unfortunately. Sterix Gauge getting a nerf. The health for it is down to 400 instead of 500, and they switched up the build path. Titanic Hydra and Ravenous Hydra cannot be swapped anymore. This is a nerf in my opinion, because now you have to commit to one or the other. So, World of Bloodlust getting completely redone. It's now going to give you lifesteal based upon how much health you are missing, and this will work on minions as well. So we'll see how this turns out for the mastery. And they also added a new mastery to the tier 1 of the Ferocity tree called Exposed Weakness. It's going to be like one of the old masteries. I can't remember if it was called Exposed Weakness or not. But now damaging enemy champions causes them to take 2% increased damage from your allies. That'll be pretty good. Adds more variety for what you can and for what you can choose. So the wolf, there was a thing that you could do where you could smite the wolf if you brought it across mid lane, and it would go over into the other jungler's camp. They've now changed that where you now have to bring it across the river and smite it there to be able to do that. And this is now also mentioned in the wolf's tooltip. Riot is fine with having this as an interaction that you can do, but they didn't want it to be so easy. So now you're only going to be able to do it with people like Tahm Kench, or if you have a Syndra on your team or whatnot. Changes to the first wave of minions. You're no longer going to be able to mess around with the first wave of minions back at your base to make them stagger and whatnot, because now the first wave of minions ignore unit collision on the way to lane. For most people, you're not even going to worry about this, so it's not a big deal. For all of you that played 100 or more games, that had 100 or more wins on Dominion, before it was announced that they were going to retire it, you will get a special icon. So you can brag that you had 100 or more wins on Dominion now to everybody. Because honestly, there's not going to be that many people with that. But so, change it to the new champ select. Hopefully that'll be coming out. This first part will be out for sure when patch 6.4 is released. So now the champion grid is now going to be accessible at all phases of champ select. This is very helpful in that it allows you to actually see what you own and what you want to play. This is something that was asked for by a lot of people. Now you can change your pick intent at all phases prior to your final pick. This is very helpful to let your team know what's going on in your mind, what you might want to change to instead of what you had before. And they fixed the bug for changing the mastery name, changing your mastery page name, and it wouldn't save the name, whatever. Not that big of a deal for that. So things that should be coming out during the 6.4 cycle for the new Champ Select. Some of the stuff that's supposed to come out for 6.3, but we know Riot. So pick intent is no longer going to be revealed to the enemy team. Bans now appear in match history. And for the choosing champion at the last second, it's supposed to be a bit more forgiving. And now the Champ Select now defaults you to your last skin selected on a given champion. Those are all supposed to be things coming out. And then here's just some bug fixes that they had. I'm not going to really go over them. But yeah, that's all the changes for patch 6.4. Let me know in the comments below what you think is going to be the most impactful change of this patch. For me, it's going to be the Gangplank nerf, as I am a Gangplank main, and now I'm going to have to work a lot harder to be as impactful as I used to be. So yeah, and that's also going to hurt competitive play quite a bit. So yeah, leave your comments below about that. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe if you did. And see you in the next one. Thanks.